Hi guys, Chuck Quinton, founder of Rotary Swing Golf here. Today you can call me the anti-lag doctor. That's right, you heard me correctly, the anti-lag doctor. While Clay spends most of his days teaching amateur golfers how to get more lag, I end up spending most of my time teaching professional golfers how to get rid of it. And a lot of people think that you can't have too much lag, and so they go through this effort of learning to produce lag, and you can actually get to the point where you very easily overdo it, and then all of a sudden you start running into a whole nother set of problems. So first off, how do you know if you have too much lag, or what would be a sign of that? Of course you can look at it on video, and you can see obviously your hands are going to be too far ahead of the ball at impact, but if you don't have a camera on you, it's not kind of difficult to tell, especially when you're out playing golf. So one of the things you can do is just look at your divots. If your divots are very, very deep, that's a really bad sign that you've got too much lag coming into impact, and that's going to create a lot of problems. Of course, here when we're giving lessons, we use a Trackman launch monitor to be able to measure the angle of attack and the path and the face angle, all of those things that are happening at impact, and that's how we start to make changes. And so I want to give you a lesson today on explaining what it is we're looking for and how we're going to alter those numbers to produce the desirable numbers, and use a case example of a student who's a professional golfer as an example. In this example, this student had a -3-degree angle of attack with his driver and 3-wood. Now, unless you have 125-mile-an-hour club head speed, hitting down at -3, the ball's not going to go really far. Certainly not the optimum distance. Ideally, in an ideal world, you want to come into that ball maybe a couple degrees positive. There's a lot of variation there depending on what we want to accomplish with the shot, but at least level, and an ideal, a little bit of a positive angle of attack. But let's just define what that means real quick. I'm using my trusty hula hoop here, and I'm going to show you what exactly is happening with that club at impact. So you can use this red guy here as the idea of where the ball is, or we'll just set a ball there. And if that club shaft is perfectly vertical at impact, the club is working back up on this. You can imagine the club kind of traveling on an arc or a circle here. The club would be approaching the ball on a shallow or ideally positive angle of attack. When you have too much shaft lean, which is a byproduct of having too much lag too long in the downswing and not getting rid of it in time, then the shaft is going to be leaning forward, and that's going to tend to create a very steep angle of attack. And so the club is still working down the hula hoop and hitting down on the ball, and that's de-lofting the club. And this, as the club's working back up, if I caught the ball on this area of the hula hoop, it would mean that I was going to have a positive angle of attack, and that's going to give me a much better launch condition for the driver. And of course, with all clubs, you don't want to hit down on it that sharply. One of the things I ask in the clinics all the time is, how steeply do you think you should hit down on an iron? And of course, they vary from iron to iron, but on average, you're only going to be about 4 degrees down. The longer the club, and the shallower the angle of attack, and the shorter the club, like down to your pitching wedge, you get into a little bit steeper angle of attack. But as an average ballpark number, you're going to be between 3 and 5 degrees, and so you can just use kind of 4 as a good reference point. That's pretty shallow when you think about it. If you think about what traveling 4 degrees down would be, it's not going to be very steep, but a lot of times people think they want to have the shaft leaned forward as far as they can get it. That's pretty typical when you see somebody who's used to flipping it. All of a sudden they watch a lot of the lag doctor videos, and now they're like this at impact, but now they're hitting down so far that the problem comes that the club is still working in to out. And so their path into the ball is to the right of the target line. That's what I want to talk about in this video. So what does that mean exactly? Well, let's get some stuff lined up here. So let's assume that this white shaft is straight down the target line, and the ball sitting here, if I caught this ball, if this was my swing plane, you can kind of use this as an idea of my swing plane. If the bottom of my swing arc is right where that ball is, and that would allow, as long as the club face is pointing toward the target, allow the ball to fly perfectly straight, start on line, and stay on line. Now when you have too much lag and you start doing some other things that are keeping the club from releasing, your swing plane gets horizontally shifted to the right. So now you can see that my hula hoop is pointing right of my target line. It's crossing over this shaft. And so now, in order to get the ball to come back to my target, the club face must be closed in relationship to the path that the club is traveling on. That's going to create a draw. So the ball is going to start not on the path line, it's going to start about 75–80% on where the club face is pointing, but the path, when I path this severely into out, is going to make it very difficult for me to get the ball to start on line and stay on line. The more severely you swing into out, the more difficult this task becomes. In an ideal world, we want that path at impact to be pointing straight down the target line, and the path to be pointing straight down the target line, we hit a straight golf shot. That's the simplest way to do it. And better players, as they learn to do other things with their bodies and they learn to create more lag, what a lot of times happens is they don't get rid of it in time. And so what happens now is that club, as I mentioned, is still traveling down its arc. So I'll turn this way for a second. It's still traveling down the plane and to the right by the time it strikes the ball. So that would look like this. My club's coming from the inside. It's working out to the right. If my club face is still square to my path and to my plane line here, the ball is just going to be a dead block. I'm going to push it out to the right. It's going to have no curvature on it. If the club face is closed in relationship to my path, I'm going to create a tendency to hit a draw, or I can hit a nice big smother snap hook. Neither one of those shots are really what we're looking for here. So the trick is to get that club, that path, to square back up so that the bottom of this path line matches up with my target line. Ball can go straight then and stay straight without having to have any curvature. So how do we do that? We have to allow the club to release. If you just hold on lag and you get into these really nice, pretty looking lag angles and you keep holding on to it and you don't let the club release, the club's always going to be working out to the right. And then as a better player, what they also tend to do is they learn to get power from this right side and this right arm, and they keep driving it down, and that gets their hands too far ahead of the ball at impact. Again, club still working out to the right. The ball is going to have to start right or going to be a hook. So what we want to do ideally is allow that club to release. How do we do it? So clean up my mess here. We're going to use an impact bag to start. The impact bag is going to make it really easy for you to start to see where your hands are at impact. If you get into the impact bag drill and you're like this and you feel that you're pushing hard with that right hand, you can see that my hands are way ahead of the club head. That's going to create that club wanting to continue down and out instead of releasing back toward the target line. So what you want to do, now again, if you have no lag or you're casting and flipping, this video is not for you, right? This is for better players who tend to have the opposite problem. They have too much lag, very, very common in better players. So what you need to do is learn to release the club at the impact bag so that everything is basically fully released. The shaft is almost vertical at this point. Here's the trick to doing that.